Let me go ahead and push my magic button here, and bring some people on. And once again, these are not the people that you would normally think of bringing in, but that's where the fun really happens. And so, um, we've got some people walking in. We've got Charlie Bearham, middle of the screen, wearing a flat cap. Hey, flat cap! He's got a flat cap. He's fitting in
I
well. Uh, did you wear that just for this? Awesome. You have
yeah.
a flat cap supporter flat cap in this. Charlie Barham joining us from Miami, 5 minutes away from my house. Chairman of the board for the Church.digital. Excited about that. We'll get into that here in a little bit. Joey Santos next to him. Joey is lead pastor, church at the bar. Former digital pastor, solid guy, great friend. Thanks for both of y'all for coming on. Joey, I just got your text. I know it's been a delayed day. Joey, I want you to tell your story, but you got to go back to work here in a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
How
gonna
how
have
many?
to,
How
but
long do you have before you have to
like
go?
10, 15 minutes is good.
That's great. So we'll do that first. But Joey, what I was really hoping for, Ezequiel Fattore with Casa Church Miami is coming on, and I want to get you and Ezequiel together.
Hmm.
Ezequiel is you know what? I'll tell you that later, and hopefully Ezekiel gets on in the 20 minutes. Joey, tell me your story here a little bit. Not my story. Tell everybody else your story.
I know.
Like, what are you doing?
Jeff, but Jeff, that's so good, and I'm so glad the day is going good for you. I mean, it has been a long day, I'm sure. A lot of conversations, good conversations. But man, it has been a great journey. Being in ministry here in America, I was born in Brazil, but being here for almost 25 years now. And but for the last year and a half, I made a decision to leave, the full-time paid ministry in church to get a job, a secular job, and then do ministry in a bar. And people ask me, say, so you're no longer full-time ministers now? I'm a full-time. I just don't get paid to do it. Uh,
Hmm.
it I never stopped being full-time minister, and uh, that's what we're doing. So we decided to just jump into this opportunity from doing church, digital church, and helping people to move from online to offline where they were, and the church to bar was part of that plan. But now the church to bar went from like a plant from a digital church to a micro church. So it was this migration that happens from like established church to digital church to a church plant from the digital church to a now full-on micro church in a bar. And we meet in the bar every Sunday, and we having great conversations. And we know we change the format. We don't follow the traditional model of a church because we're in a bar. So it would not make sense at all for us to try to do three songs and announcements uh, in a message because and there's nothing wrong with that except that in that environment will not match. So we're in a place where we keep the tables and the chairs the way they are. People come sit where they want, they feel comfortable, and we have conversations. So I prepared the message, and we split that into three or four parts, and we ask questions where we can all participate. People can participate by answering the questions. The questions are formatted in a way that has to be a real life connection to the scripture that we're studying. So, an
Hmm.
example, like we're studying the book of James right now, and we asked book of James is great because it's literally this real life Christian life experience. Like it's just James is just like here it is. Here's what you got to get it right. Here's how you focus, and it's very easy to turn that into real life connections, real life experiences, um, and it has been very, very challenging to a lot of us participating. But uh, again, overall, it has been the fact that most people that come to church at bar, they come because they're there on a Saturday night and a Friday night. It's a big establishment, and they're there, to have fun with their friends and have drinks. But they see signs everywhere: church at the bar Sundays at 10 a.m. And literally, people ask questions all the time. Is this a joke? Is this for real? Um, but and the staff explains the staff doesn't go to church for the most part, but they literally explain to them, no, the church for real. The pastor works right here, and you can ask him, you can talk to him about it. So I get to talk to people about church during my work. I'm an operations manager there, and we have this just really incredible opportunity to connect with people where they are, and
Yeah.
that's what the church of the bar is really about.
It's that's so good. Like you have this one of my favorite parts of your story, Joey, is where the church that you were at before you left, before you walked away from it.
Yeah,
Like they were trying. You would tell the story about how you were trying to reach church people through
yeah,
a micro location at the bar. And it didn't work. You really weren't reaching bar people because the bar people didn't want to go to a church, and the church people
yeah,
didn't want to go to a bar. And so like you had this fundamental shift moving away from reaching the church people through the bar, but you said, hey, we're going to reach bar people through the bar. Maybe talk a little bit about that, the contextualization of that, and doing something different to reach this different
yeah.
people.
I think the biggest difference is it's so interesting looking back, right? Like we sometimes we feel like we got all this figured out. Once you jump in, like I did, and realize I don't know anything about this, and I'm going to have to learn as I go, and learning through relationships, to talking to people, to connecting with people, and that's exactly how we did it. We put ourselves in a place where people actually felt comfortable enough to ask questions, right? So they like, I want to ask questions because you're here, you're at the bar, you're a pastor. I want to ask these questions because I don't feel comfortable going to a church building to ask these questions. And we've been
Yeah.
having some incredible real life conversations that I never had in a church building before with people. And all this, the people that ask those questions, some of them are like, I want to be part of this community and continue these conversations. The thing that I have two boys, 15-year-old and 18-year-old. The 15-year-old just a couple weeks ago, he went with me to Lexington for a missions conference, and it was so interesting because it was an opportunity to reconnect some old friends, church people, and my son noticed one thing, that every time I talk to somebody from established church and they ask about, so what are you doing right now? It's like, we're doing the church at the bar. And every answer was the same. I mean, I'm not kidding because my son was like, why does everybody keep saying, oh, that's okay? Oh, that's okay. Like every time I said, we're meeting at church at the bar, and people are like, oh, well, that's okay. Like, I'm going to need their approval. They're like giving me their approval to meet in the church, to meet in a
Mm-hmm.
bar, and doing church in the bar. And my 15-year-old noticed that. He noticed like why people think that you need their approval to meet at the bar, like you're asking their blessing. And I said, just because most likely they really don't know what this experience looks like.
Yeah.
They don't know what the experience feels like. So they know one model, they know one way of doing church, and because of my passion with digital church, with alongside of that many times was the answers I got from people when I explained like I'm a digital pastor, and they're like, oh, well that's okay. I mean, they don't know, but we knew the impact that digital ministries and micro churches are having in communities where we do one thing in common. I think one thing about digital church and micro church you have in common is that they both meet people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
They both make the effort to go and make disciples, right? To just do exact, not to sit and take, but to go and make. So
Yeah.
I think that's the big part of that we learn from this is that people are there out there waiting to have these conversations. They're
Yeah.
waiting to have these connections. And Jesus was absolutely right. Most likely we didn't get it right, but he did because he said, go and make disciples. And I think we got to develop this ability in everybody to be able to like, okay, what it means really means to go. And it's okay to go, right? It's okay to just go and make.
Yeah.
And we embrace that. I think we're very happy that we embrace that mission to just go and make and see what God does with it.
That's so good, man. It's funny. I seeing Charlie. Charlie's like jumping out of his seat, man.
Yeah.
Charlie. I don't know that I've ever told you Joey's story, but as you're hearing this, man, what are you thinking?
Well, the one thing that is really just there's a couple of different things because I was going to ask you why a bar, and then you answered it. You said because that's where people are, and
Yeah.
then then why digital? Because that's where people are, right? As we
Yeah.
go through that, So, but what really was just your last statement, and he said go, didn't say come to me,
Hmm.
or come to the church, or come to the synagogue, or come to the temple, or come to the things to meet me. It was go make disciples. It was we were to go out. It wasn't wait and come to me. And so I think that's what's a very powerful statement as we go through this because you know that's what we're doing as digital missionaries is we're going to where people are,
Hmm.
not to not saying hey come to us, but we're going to where they are through that. When you were a digital pastor, I'm curious on to ask you this, the one question is what challenge did you find the most when you were as a digital pastor, going through that.
Oh, that's a that's a good question. And I think looking back, the biggest challenge is to not really understand was not to really understand how relationships were formed in that environment. Like like we have social media, and there's a reconnection that can establish through social media, but it's not a relationship building. With the church, the digital church, actually real is a real chance to do real relationship building. And we walked in not really knowing how that works, but we learned very soon by doing it. They're like, that's what people want. People wanted to figure out a way to build this relationship, and that's when we start to modify how we did digital church to fit that need that would allow people to build real relationships. So it was very interesting. I remember vividly we're having this, you know, streaming, but we did it a little differently. We had like a live studio and would send back to the church and on worship, things like that. But I always I would close the live service in the studio, and I had two volunteers by me monitoring the chat room, and this young lady came in on the chat room, and she said, "I need prayer. Um, this week I lost my mom, and my right leg was amputated."
Hmm.
And I just need prayer. And we immediately move her to a private chat room to pray with her. As we having the volunteers having a conversation with her, learned that she lived 20 minutes from the church. She lived like 20 minutes from the physical church. But she said, because of the situations of my life, she said that in the chat room, I never felt comfortable walking in the building. So I felt it putting me here. So one of the first things I did, like, because she's a female uh, person, I had a female volunteer connect with her immediately. And I said, don't invite her to come here, but ask her if she wants to have a coffee since she's so close here. And they start meeting weekly after that in a coffee house. And I said, don't ever invite her to come to church. Don't do it. Just connect with her, develop their relationship, and see where you go from there. And man, I mean that relationship lasts for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and every Sunday she kept coming back to the digital church. She's 20
Yeah.
minutes from the physical building, right? But she found relationship. Like she really found a genuine relationship that she needed through the digital ministry. So that was the biggest challenge. It was to not go in not knowing. Like we go in thinking, I'm going to stream my service. I'm going to broadcast content. I'm going to let people know who we are, and then learning that hold on, actually we're encountering people that wants to actually have relationship through these channels. How do we do that? And that's when we jump into to discover how to unpack all that and do all that. And Jeff is always a big part of helping us to figure that out in that process. But it was such a great thing to do, to discover those channels and figure out a way to develop real relationships with people through digital
Yeah.
venues.
Y'all, I'm about to push my magic button, and it's like this is a moment where like pandemonium is about to
Let's
happen on this
go.
stream.
Bring
Like,
it on. Bring it
you
on.
know, you talk about Avengers and bringing together all these different people in Endgame, and it's like, what is happening right now? Captain America, Steve Rogers is literally picking up Thor's hammer. I don't understand where we are and how we got to this moment. This last. I just put on Discord, sent a notification to 500 people, like it's about to get real right here on this stream, and I'm just going to do this. I cannot wait for this conversation and these people to interact with each other. And so going from, I'm over here, I guess, on my left, but walking through here, I've got Charlie Bearham, chairman of the board of the Church Digital, corporate guy, works in med tech, huge vision of understanding digital, and really, a lot of the crazy stuff that we're doing with the Church Digital. Like, I don't have to convince Charlie of what we're doing towards it. So it's beautiful. Next to him, I got Joey Santos, who is church at the bar, former digital pastor, micro church pastor, operations director at the bar where he does church out of. And so literally a co-vocational model pastor moving into a new approach of doing it not at a mega level, but at a micro level. I got Jay Kranda, the digital pastor at just a small church some of us have heard of, Saddleback Church, who's one of the OGs, original gangsters of digital ministry. 10, 12, 29. He was doing online church before Al Gore invented the internet. Let's just say it that way. A new recent author, Online Church is Not the Answer. Interesting book. We can talk about that later. And we've got Ezequiel Fattore. I've been trying to get a meeting with Ezequiel Fattore for a while. I'm so excited he jumped on this stream. Ezequiel, I'm going to tell your story up front. And then I want this group to like talk about it, because Ezequiel Fattore's story is one, and I'm gonna butcher some of the numbers, and so Ezequiel, you can fact check me, okay? I'm gonna tell my version, which is always going to be sexier than the reality, but it's to say the reality is, man, what a phenomenal opportunity. So Ezequiel is lead pastor at Casa Church Miami, a church in Miami Beach. Now, I'm guessing on this number. Ezequiel, Miami Beach, 100, 150, 200 people. Like, what are you seeing on a Sunday?
We have two services of 180 people.
So two services combined for 180 total.
Oh, two services combined, it gets to 300.
Okay, so 300 people. Okay, that's a medium-sized church by America's standards. Miami Beach, that might as well be a freaking mega church. Like that's Saddleback on the East Coast, because it is so hard to do church in my. I've tried to plant a church. In my Charlie's shaking his head. He understands. Miami Beach is as hard of as I've had pastors tell me. Miami Beach is where good churches go to die, and so that he's even doing that.
Good thing is they told us that after we opened it.
He's heard. He knows it's where churches go to die, man.
Yeah, we had no
But
idea. We're like, oh, this is gonna be so cool. We open it and it's like, oh, this is where churches die. Nice, thank you.
it's interesting. Kit Williams was on the call earlier, and we're going to get together. Kit Williams is missions director at Christ Journey, Ezequiel. I really want us to get together and talk. But here's the fascinating story. Ezequiel, talk to the group here a little bit about the experience of what you're seeing digitally in Latin and South America with what you're creating out of this small, medium-sized church in Miami Beach.
Well, for me, it's really an honor to be here. and thank you for the patience. English is not my first language, but I'm actually from Argentina. We won the World Cup this last World Cup, and we're so proud of it that I'm gonna say it every time I have an opportunity to say it. So I'm from Argentina. So good thing is, yeah, my dad started with this church in Miami Beach 20 years ago. It transitioned to me and my wife 10 years ago, and actually a little less, 7 years ago. But we started doing church online around 13 or 14 years ago. Uh, if it was like hard to do church online on the American side, you cannot imagine what it means to tell to the Latin people that you're gonna do church online and you're gonna invite people to connect instead of go to the place. Of course, then COVID hit, and all the people that were criticizing us, they were now asking us questions on how to do it, because we had 10 years of experience before getting into COVID. And that's when we started seeing a real growth, because we were not saying that we wanted to do church online is not putting a video. It was how to create a community around the experience, how to create a church. So we were saying that we were trying to create a community. Uh, COVID gave us the opportunity to focus only on church online, and that gave us the opportunity to grow. That turned into now we have two services of 180 in person, but online at the end of the week, between the people that connect and the people that watch it on demand, we get to 7 to 10,000 people watching just on YouTube. We have small groups that connect through Zoom, and we have around 800 people connecting around the globe to the small groups that we have through Zoom. We started opening small groups in person in all these countries, and we have in Argentina, Peru, Santiago de Chile, Ecuador, Costa Rica, Ciudad de Mexico, Montreal, and many more. I'm gonna forget, but it's about 12 groups, in-person groups around the globe. And for the last 3 years, we've been visiting these places where there's so many people, and we've been doing pop-ups. We rent nightclubs, and we invite people to come for that night to not only to hear us, but to do a night of meeting in between us and them, in each other. So we did the first one in Colombia. We rented a space for 100 people, and 300 people showed up, and that was the situation every place we went. We went to Ciudad de Mexico, Lima, Santiago. In Buenos Aires, actually, last time we went, we had 650 people. It was 3 blocks of people lining up outside of the place, and every time we do it, I'm actually in tears, because one thing is to see numbers on a YouTube page, but the other thing is to start actually seeing people bringing their stories on how their lives are transformed by connecting, by being part of the community. And it's beautiful because you throw a joke on one of these in-person services, an inside joke,
Yeah.
and people get it. People get it. People know who you're talking about. If I talk about my wife or something that it's people are related to, they react to it because they've been connecting. So it's beautiful to actually see these people that connect to church. So those are some of the numbers, and that's in a nutshell the story that we're living.
That's beautiful. I actually I want to invite Jay Kranda to speak into this. Jay, as you're hearing Ezekiel's story, Casa Church Miami, like what are your thoughts here, man?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I didn't know much of the story before this, so it's kind of fun to hear
Mhm.
a little bit more how God's been moving. It's actually what kind of my hope a lot of church leaders how they would think about integrating digital and the physical and kind of using it. So sometimes, this is kind of Jeff and I have talked about this many times, but a lot of churches just kind of turn on a stream and don't really think much about it. And so I think it's COVID did a lot to introduce a lot of church leaders to technology, but I think it also gave them an excuse not to look at it again, because they had this experience, and they maybe only focus in on negative parts of the experience and not realizing there were some really good aspects of that type of connection. And so that's where I love this idea of planting something, seeing digital as something that is part of the strategy and not separate, while also not forsaking the gathering in person. And I think that's we need to work that out together. So I really love hearing that execution of the strategy at a base level.
Yeah, in Jay's book, we talked about this on a stream when you released the book. Was it 4 months ago at this point? Online church is not
Months
the
ago or
answer.
something. Yeah.
Yes, somewhere around there. Online church is not the answer. It's ironic for a digital pastor to write a book that way. Just saying, it's read the book. It's a page turner. But the idea of a middle-sized church, a medium-sized church, a small church, understanding how to utilize digital and leaning into that. Like when I heard it was Ezekiel, like I did a podcast with Ezekiel, I don't know, 2 years ago at this point, maybe, and where I heard this story for the first time, and dude, I'm like jumping out of my chair. I'm like, dude, we got a guy. We got a guy that's actually doing that, and it's not even just even like U.S. based church reaching U.S. based people, and some of the stuff that a lot of what we're doing, like this guy's tapping in globally, realizing who the audience group is, and tapping into groups online, growing physical locations, micro locations, doing this globally. Like it's to me, this is a I'm gonna say this, but it's the Saddleback model where Jay, like you are doing groups online, you are doing the distributed model with micro locations, and everybody's got a different flavor and spin towards this, but this is a middle sized, a small church that's understanding how to do this, and to really lean into it, man, and it got me so excited. And even Joey he had to leave, he had to go to work, but I really wanted him to hear this. We've been talking about Joey's Brazilian, which is Portuguese, so Joey is has a heart to really figure out how to partner and work with churches in Portugal, or to help U.S. churches try to figure out how to reach into there. So we've been networking and trying to figure out how to do that, to really start to get some multiplication ideas and discipleship and missionary work that's happening in Portugal. And Ezekiel, when I hear what you're working on, man, like that's this incredible opportunity to even start to figure out, hey, you got all these groups, 800 people in groups. You've got micro locations, physical locations starting to pop up, engaging into this. What is discipleship? How can we start equipping them not to just consume the product, not to just be in community together, consume a stream, be in community together? What does it look like to equip them and help
Yeah.
them try to find what it is to be on mission, and mobilize them and send them out where they are not just receiving? Charlie, what did Joey say? Wasn't come and see, but it was go and do. It was something like that, where it's
Go
not just
go make disciples. And he said, go make
yeah,
disciples. And it wasn't say, come come to our building to make to go to make disciples. It was to let us go out and make disciples. And it's to go where, and I asked
Yeah.
him, I said, why digital? And he said, because that's where people are. Why
yeah.
why the bar? Because that's where people are.
So
And for
that's
us, we had just had Vision Sunday on church, and I had to. It was interesting because it's the church online that is forcing us to grow in person now. And that's the tension that we're living now, because when we spoke first, we were having only one service.
yeah,
And we had like so many more people are coming now because they're seeing our Instagram or the YouTube videos. And it's amazing to see that anyone or 80% of the people that come for the first time of church is not the first time with us, and you see it in their face. They smile at you. They're like, I know you. I know who you are. I've been listening to you. So they're part of the church online before being part of the church in person.
yeah.
Um, but now it's forcing us to actually rethink. And I was telling you that we're in that tension right now, that should we open a third service, because we have two full services. But I know if we open a third service, it's a lot of work, and still I'm not gonna actually get to near the 10% of the people that we're reaching with the church online. Because if I add 180 to the number, it's not even close to the 2,000 people that watch the service after one streaming. So it's learning all those things. So what you were saying, I was explaining the Great Commission that says we should go, and that's what we're doing. We're not calling people to come to the building. We're going to where they already
They
are.
are.
Love it.
Because actually making a bigger building, that's always the option. It's spending millions to reach thousands, and we're trying to spend thousands to reach millions.
Yeah.
So that's the whole vision.
It's ironic. You're the third person that said that quote on the stream. I'm curious. Where did you hear that from, Ezequiel? Do you know?
Yeah, it's from. I heard in a podcast from Kerry Newhoff in his interview with the church home people.
Yes, I was about to say that's
yeah.
Was
beautiful.
it Mark Vinty?
Gave me so
it was
much
probably
language.
Mark Vinty. Mark
Vinty,
Vinty,
yeah.
I think, was there. Yeah. He was the first guy that that I heard say that, and so I stole the quote from him. Why the quote is why pay millions to reach thousands when we can pay thousands to reach millions, and so it's kind of flipping it around and using the scalability of digital to reach well beyond the physical reach without doing it, and so I love that approach and that. To be honest, the church home approach, Ezequiel, that actually might be a really good play for you as you're trying to figure out. I mean, you're landlocked. You probably can barely afford the building that you have in Miami Beach because Miami Beach prices and taxes are just astronomical. Like Miami's an expensive city. Miami Beach is the cream of the creme on that side, and so it's really exciting. To just be at the verge of this. How do we really tap in and not just utilize? And I appreciate so much that you're asking this question. Not just utilize digital as a consume this product. I've got tens of thousands of people that are connecting with us online. We're done. We've achieved it. And I love this about Jay. That's not Jay's heart either with Saddleback. It never has been. But to move beyond just that connection level, but getting people in community, discipling them, and building a much richer level of that. Jay, do you want to maybe speak to that? What does that look like? That beyond just the connection level, beyond just consuming that service, what does that look like in Saddleback culture digitally?
Yeah, so one of the blessings of technology and tools like this is that it normally adds a lot of momentum. And this is why we're usually chasing new technology, new platforms, new things. And so for example, a lot of churches got onto platforms like the Church Online platform when they launched because it was a really affordable way. As a church who's been streaming, they've been streaming since I was in high school in the 2003, 2004. It used to cost thousands of dollars every month in bandwidth to stream. And then when Church Online introduced rebroadcast strategies using video files and even all sorts of different things, it was a lot easier and a lot more affordable. And generally when you remove friction, you have more people on board. This happened, again, another wave when Mark Zuckerberg made streaming free on Facebook. You had another wave of activity of churches that were pretty anti it, not necessarily because they were against it. It's just too hard and they didn't want to spend any money. Well, when Facebook Live got introduced, you had another wave of people. The problem with free is you tend to not think about it. You just do it. And I think what a lot of churches now coming out of COVID have to wrestle through is, hey, what actually leads to deep engagement? And so I think that's been the the conversations a lot of churches have been having. Like, we believe in streaming, we believe in digital, we believe in technology, but what actually gets people not just to watch something, but actually stick?
Yeah.
And so for us, I think because we have the muscles, meaning we've been doing this for a long time, we know how to do streaming every week, we know how to do YouTube and all this. We spend, and even staff and resource, less on that now, and more it's like, I say a lot, we spend a lot of time getting people to turn on their video and meet people in spaces versus just getting another viewer. So, for example, we're doing a lot of Zoom connections on Sundays. We're launching large Zoom groups on various platforms. We're trying to meet people the same way as you might meet somebody if you show up physically. Online, meeting people is different. You either are meeting them in like a fourth space, like a Discord or a chat experience, or you meet them on a Zoom. And so, for example, a lot of the things our team does is we're trying to do micro events, I would say, on platforms like Zoom. So like this Sunday, for example, we do something called Newcomers Connection, where it's a 15-minute connect on Zoom at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And we promote it the week before, hey, come hang out with us. And we might only have 15 people on that. But if I get 15 people and I do that every 2 weeks, you start stacking that over month, that's a lot of people. And so it's like, it's really trying to get away from thinking about the thousands and how do you actually get tens of people?
Yeah.
Because if you start getting tens of people, you start, and again, I think this is why it's a lot easier just to turn on a stream. Like, for example, you even take an event like this, is it, like and obviously this is like a big event, it's 12-hour stream. Is it better to do this as a big event, or is it better just to call 5 people that are millionaires? And
if you know any millionaires, I will take the number. I'm not against doing both.
Yeah.
I'm in
But
Orange
keep
County,
going.
so it's a little easier for me. But I will say, like, these are the tensions of, like I would always say there are people that are general consultants, and then there are the McKinseys that only work with governments. And both strategies are viable. And I think digital provides this spectrum of opportunity. You either are super high end, and I think sometimes churches like, oh, we want to reach everybody. But in reality, stop worrying about being everybody and just, what platform do people in Miami use? And maybe that's going to be different than what and like, this is why I would say technology and digital, people like there's too many opportunities, and that's actually paralyzing. And then you tend to copy. Like, for example, this is why my book is about online church is not the answer. I'm an online pastor, and there's probably only 15, 20 of us in the world, like, really. And I don't think the normal church needs to hire an online pastor. Like, that's not that's not needed. I just need pastors and church leaders thinking digitally.
Yeah.
And so it's like, don't get wrapped up. And so this is, again, when the life churches, the elevations, the flamingo churches, all these churches back in the day that launched these platforms, they didn't mean it to get a bunch of online pastors. They just wanted churches thinking digitally. And so that's kind of my joke with my book, is like, don't copy what we're one of the biggest churches in the world. Of course we're going to do this thing, but that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to the church I came to faith in. And so, yeah, it's kind of that thinking that way, getting more people on video and seeing faces versus just getting people to view a stream for a couple seconds is kind of the long play.
So Jay, let me ask you.
Love that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna, because I think you're spot on, but when you're speaking to other churches who philosophical don't look at that and say, listen, church is only if you're here together in this building. That's how we're only going to consider that. That's it. And it's interesting because when I read the Bible and it talks about ecclesia, it talks about a gathering of people. It doesn't necessarily say, and I think it's 115 times it mentions it in the Bible, that ecclesia and describes that. It doesn't say about coming to this. It's all about wherever we are. That's where we'll be at. But how do I, as trying to help have those conversations with those churches, How do we get them to see something? And it appears to be more a U.S. issue, which is
Yeah.
interesting because globally we are the folks are knocking on our doors and knocking them down. We publicists should say, versus not here in the United States, which is completely different.
Well, I think kind of going again on that idea that reducing friction introduces new problems. I think the friction of Christianity in the US and the luxury of having buildings has confused people thinking church in a building is church. And so I think this is actually a unique 300-year problem of Christianity thinking church only happens in a space. You know what I mean? I think the church for most of history has been decentralized and was in homes amongst, the mess. So I tend to remind, and it's hard. I personally, and even kind of the title of my book, I'm not trying to convince the Jeffs of the world and the Joeys of the world that digital church is important. I'm trying to convince everybody else.
Exactly.
And so like that's why I actually trick them in a sense of like, of course, living only your digital life online is not the answer. Like that's not the
Yeah.
answer. And so what I do in there is, and then what I do is I kind of peel the onion of like, do you like one of the things I kind of point out in the book, and others have done this. I think I've heard it from a couple of theologians that the irony that how a lot of Christians say, digital church isn't church, while our primary relationship with our creator is a non-spatial relationship. So somehow we can connect with God non-spatially, but if I connect with somebody non-spatially online, it's not real community. That's a really irony of a dilemma that you have to really unpack there. I know some people might argue the Holy Spirit somehow sits in a fourth dimension, and I go, okay, whatever you want to argue. But like, I think in this case, I like to use the illustration that I believe that in-person community is the best expression of biblical community that we can have. And I do not argue that I think there's a reason why even in heaven, there's still physical and spirit. I mean, there's something there to that. And so I like to use the example very practically that, I'm married and my wife and we text and interact all day, but I still come home to her. But I do not think my texting throughout my day is somehow prohibiting or getting in the way of our relationship. I think it actually
Oh,
strengthens
wow.
our
Wow.
relationship. And so like,
Wow.
and so in that example, I tend to encourage church leaders and volunteers and staff, like your best like I have two brothers and we since 16 years old haven't lived under the same house. I have a text thread and that relationship is so powerful because of this digital interaction. We text throughout the day. And actually sometimes guys tend to be better in text than in person.
Yeah.
And so what I like to encourage is I know digital can introduce new problems and new questions. The same way as like digital can get in the way of my relationship with my wife. I can say the wrong thing. I can look at the wrong thing on the internet. There's all sorts of things and I need to be aware. But let's not act like most of our relationships are better because of texting and Zoom and calls and all these things. I think the closest relationships are deeper because of this. I can stay connected. And so I like to encourage, like, don't think of it as this negative. Think of it as something we get to wield. And that's usually that's where I come from because I'm the digital pastor. They see me as this extremist, but I usually start with, I'm on your side. But I think let's flip it. Let's see the opportunity. And that's where I'm at. Like, it's there's like people who are very optimist and more doomsday. I don't necessarily believe the world's ending in the next 10 years. I think we
Yeah.
might have another 1,000 years. And so like, I'm very excited about the potential. We might have, just because the world's going this way doesn't mean there might not be another revival and there's going to be another bell curve.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
like I think technology is one of those things that we get to ride that wave and might start another bell curve and God's already doing. So I usually try to, that's my angle of trying to turn it as a positive because there are some things you got to wrestle through. It's easier for people not to come to church.
Yeah.
And so now what does that mean? And I think digital and streaming and all these things have flipped the proposition. A lot of churches in the US, at least a lot of the mega churches the last 30 years have leaned into sermon titles and relevant branding to why people might show up, or at least hook new people. I think now it's community. People don't show if people aren't showing up for that message title. They're showing up
Yeah.
because they're lonely and they want to meet somebody. So that I think it actually means if people are just staying online and not showing up in person to a church that's nearby, for example,
Yeah.
you gotta maybe if they can get everything online then in person, you have to reevaluate what are you doing in person.
Yeah.
And so, and those are things that we as a church are wrestling through, and we
Yeah.
are leaning into.
The challenge to get people to come to the building. Well, if everybody's watching online and they can't get that in physical space, they're staying at home on the couch. I mean that's really a chance for you to look at what you're doing in the physical environments and how can we create more of that community physically, because evidently people aren't getting that idea. Yeah, I mean, ads, and I know Jay, you're an incredible what you're doing marketing, and you're one of the leaders in the church space. Like people don't really understand to the level of what you're doing, even at the global level, towards that. But the ads and the sermons and the metadata, like that's a great way to connect. But if all you're doing is connecting with that content and not going down the community, I mean, you're missing so much opportunity with that. Well, Jay, I know we're going long with you, and so I appreciate the time with this. And we've got somebody else that's in the waiting room. I'm excited about this next piece. Hey, and just Jay and Ezekiel, I want to ask both you guys this question. So with we ask everybody on the show two questions here as we're wrapping up. Jay, I'll let you go first, and you can take off because I know you got to go. Number one, can missions happen digitally? Can missions happen digitally? Jay, your take.
I mean, I believe, yeah. I think some of the coolest things around missionary work are happening in digital spaces. I'm working with some ministries right now. I was actually up last night talking to some ministries doing work in Turkey and in Pakistan. And there are people in those countries creating digital ads, starting faith conversations. I mean, I heard a stat that the one ministry in Turkey told me that there were only 10,000 Christians in all of Turkey, which I was like, I don't know if that's true or not, but they were saying how many Muslims, and we're talking about how they're creating these Instagram, Facebook ads to start conversations.
Yeah,
I mean, I think I believe in both the physical and the digital, but there's some really cutting edge things and starting conversations that people might have in a WhatsApp conversation versus they might not have it in person. So I think it's definitely possible.
definitely love it. And number two, can the church exist digitally?
Yeah, I believe an expression of the church can exist digitally. Yes.
Awesome. Hey Jay, I'm going to let you go. Feel free to exit stage left. Thank you so much for being around. Hey, tell my friend David Benoit I said hello. I just saw
I
a
will.
donation come in from David.
Oh, that's
Love
cool.
our MII friends over there. But tell him I said hey, and we'll talk later. Thank you, sir.
Sweet.
And so let me come over to you, Ezekiel, asking the same two questions. Number one, can missions exist digitally?
Well, I have to answer that they're already happening. It's already happening. I mean, for uh, for me, it's a question that the answer is already in the past. It's already happening. We're seeing people connecting all over the world. Um, I just went to Spain in January as a vacation, and I put an Instagram post saying, "Hey, I'm here. If you guys want to meet at a cafe, we'll meet." It was, and I gave 24 hours of time, and 15 people showed up.
Mm,
People that actually connect to the church, that they're part of our community, um, and they start creating. So it's happening. It's happening. It's happening. It's already happening. And I'm talking Spain because it's one of the hardest. Europe is one of the hardest places right now. Uh, so we can go back to those places where it started and bring the gospel back through the online.
Beautiful. I love that. Number two, oh my gosh, we can talk. We are going to get together very soon and dig into this. I'm looking forward to more conversation. Number two, can the church exist in digital space?
Same answer. It's already happening.
It's already happening. I
It's
love it.
it's already happening. It's already happening.
Awesome.
It's already
By the way,
happening.
that's been the typical answer. Usually
I
followed with
do
laughter.
believe.
No, what's ironic is the people are asking are already doing it, and it's almost like why do I have to justify stuff that I've been doing since 2016? And so I love this. Ezequiel, I'm going to let you go as well, my friend,
Thank you. Thank you.
and
Thank you.
and we're gonna move on.